First of all, I would like to wish everyone an auspicious welcome or auspicious greeting. And so today is the New Year's Day of 2021. And so to take this opportunity, I would like to wish everyone a happy New Year's. And so 2020 was a very difficult year for everyone and brought very great hardships all over the world. But in 2021, so everyone in the world, in particular everyone who is studying the Dharma, and especially everyone who is in the Shudras, I hope that you are all healthy and that your activities of study and contemplation go well.
Today is the first day of 2021. So I should like to wish everyone a happy new year. 2020 was a difficult year for all of us in every corner of the world. So I sincerely pray that this year will be a wonderful year for everyone. Thank you so much. 今天是2021年的这个新年的第一天，我想借此机会祝愿大家新年快乐，万事如意。2020年对于我们每个人来说的话，就是可能都是非常的特别，也是非常辛苦和艰难的一年。所以在此，我由衷的祝愿每一位在新的一年当中能够健康顺利、吉祥圆满。谢谢。다 되네. 다 가상 가니 당연 되죠. 주지 도나마도. 다 가상 가니
So over the last 4 days, I've spoken about the background history and the origins of the 4 dharmas, and I haven't finished it. There's a bit left, but still. But today I'm actually going to talk about the 4 dharmas themselves. So now the text that I'm actually teaching is the text called The 4 Dharmas in Brief in the Collected Dharmas, in the collected works of Gampopa. And so I have given this to Shudras already. So I'd like to ask everyone to please look at the text as I teach. And so it says in the text, Namoguru. Dharma must become the Dharma must become the path must dispel confusion, and confusion must arise as wisdom. And so this begins at the very beginning. It says Namoguru. And so Namoguru is Sanskrit. And if you translate it into Tibetan, it's I prostrate to the Guru. That is what it means. And of course, even if I don't explain it, everyone will understand it. But I thought if I spoke a bit about the way we should understand it, so generally, in Tibetan, we say Lama, and that in Tibetan is Guru. But Lama is a new word that was made up on the basis of the Sanskrit word Guru. In Sanskrit, the word Guru has many different meanings. one of the most important meanings is being heavy or important. And so that's what how we should understand it. And so what this means is that the guru is heavy in qualities. And so often we say that someone is heavy. So meaning heavy in qualities or weighty in qualities. But if we change the Tibetan into Tibetan, it would be chiwa. It wouldn't sound good. And it also is the word that is used for manure from livestock. And so since it's too close to that, and so they translated the meaning as lana meba, which means is none above or none higher, and that created the word lama, or none higher. When we say unsurpassed or none higher and none above, the meaning of this is, for example, in the Vinaya, when we talk about when women first were allowed to become monastic, one of the situations that for them to take ordination is that they first had to accept the 8 heavy dharmas. And these 8 heavy dharmas, and there are many different ways to translate this. One of these is, one of them, there are different ways they're translated in Tibetan. One is the first as the 8 unexcelled dharmas. And the reason for calling this is that as soon as you become a bhikshuni, then you're not allowed to transgress or violate the 8 these 8 points, and so therefore it is given that name. So basically, when we say lama in Tibetan, it means someone has the unsurpassed qualities, and someone who has a fine, superior character. And that's what we should understand it as meaning. Also, in Sanskrit, when we say guru, there is another meaning, and that meaning is that if we take the 2 syllables, gu and ru, apart and explain it in that way, and so here we say gu means dharma, it means darkness, and ru means light. And so when you say guru, when you join the 2 together, it means the one who illuminates the darkness inside sentient beings' mind, or who shines the light of prajna. So in brief, and so no matter which angle we look at it from, when we say guru or lama, it shouldn't be understood as being someone like a school teacher. A lama or a guru is not someone who makes people look outside of themselves, but instead someone who gets people to look inside themselves. And so in this way, he's the person who gives us direction for this human life, and also someone who gives a good example for us. And so guru, because of their own experience and their capabilities, is someone who can make the latent prajna and latent capacity within our mind manifest and evident. And so that is how we should understand this world. So when we say the word guru, it's a very widespread and widely used in India, and also in the Shakya caste or the Newaras of Nepal. It's also very commonly used, but among Buddhists in general, the word guru is primarily used among Tibetan Buddhists. In the Chinese tradition, there is secret mantra that is spread, and also in Japan, and in the Japanese secret mantra, the word guru is not used very often at all. But there's another word that has the same meaning, or another similar word, and that is a spiritual friend, or just a friend, or a mitra in Sanskrit. And this word And so this word is very widespread among all Buddhists. So when we talk about a guru or a spiritual friend, in terms of the meaning, they're not that different, but the word guru is primarily used among the secret mantra practitioners, it seems to me. So when we talk about a guru or a spiritual friend, is important when we practice the Dharma, in particular in the Mahayana and the secret mantra. And so what is the reason for this? There are many different reasons, but today the one that I'd like to explain today is that in the Mahayana Sublime Continuum treatise, at the beginning there's a presentation of the three jewels, in which it says that it's because of the teacher, the teachings and the precepts. There are the three vehicles, three trainings, and three activities, and from this there are determined to be three refuges. So this is what it says there. And so it's similar to that. And so the meaning, Mahayana practitioners seek the state of Buddhahood. And so for their sake, there is the jewel of the Buddha. The Pratyeka Buddhas in their last lifetime do not depend upon a teacher, but go alone to charnel grounds and such places where they say human bones and stuff. So this causes them to realize the order of the cessation of the links of interdependence. So for that reason, they depend upon Dharma itself, and thus for their sake, there's the jewel of the Dharma. The Shravakas listeners are primarily monastic. They they practice listening, contemplation, and meditation within the community of the Sangha. So that primarily needs to be done with like-minded Dharma companions, and so there is the jewel of the Sangha for them. So in brief, usually, the way we usually say, the person who is the one who's teaching the path is the Buddha, the path is the Dharma, and the companions on the path is the jewel of the Sangha. And this is what we normally say. Similarly, now if we think about ourselves, and actually, who is it who actually teaches what we should do and what we should give up? Is our guru, the spiritual friend. And for these reasons, in the Mahayana, and especially for those practitioners of the secret mantra, we are primarily striving to achieve Buddhahood. And so the Lama who actually teaches us how to do this is extremely important, especially in the secret mantra. The secret mantra is like the shortcut or the fast way to get to Buddhahood. And when you talk about a shortcut, and when you say a shortcut, normally what do we think? It's a way in which you can get to the place where you're going more quickly. But it's not just that. A shortcut also means it's different than like the main roads that most people follow. It's a path that only a few people go along, that only a few people take. And it's also a way that's usually not as good as the roads that most people find. It's also maybe a slightly dangerous route. So that's how we should understand it. And so if you're going down a path that you don't know, if you've decided to go down a way that you don't know, if you're taking that way, then you need to look for someone who knows that route and ask them to teach you the route so that you can go down that way. And then you need to go following their directions. And so in this way, the guru is the person who's teaching the shortcut to Buddhahood. And so for that reason, in the secret mantra, when we are practicing the secret mantra Dhamma, what it especially means is that It teaches us the way to give up our ordinary appearances and ordinary attachments and to transcend them. And so for that reason, when we're practicing the secret mantra, there's someone who helps us be able to get beyond the limits of our ordinary way of thinking and our ordinary attitudes. To give an example of that, so I think it's for that reason. Example of this is when we say that the guru is a Buddha. Normally, when we say Buddha, we think about someone that we just can't reach with our hands, someone who's far away, someone like a god. But in the secret mantra, we say the guru is a Buddha, and so the Buddha is someone who's right in front of our eyes. Someone with whom we can eat and drink, that's a Buddha. And so when we point it out in that way, this is something that's hard to get our minds around, and it's a bit uncomfortable. It's right. Yeah, but if we talk about it straightforwardly, when they're talking about secret mantra practice, it should be something that's hard to get your minds around and that is a bit uncomfortable. If everyone could get their minds around it, if they could understand it, then there'd be no reason to teach the secret mantra in secret. You could just teach it to everyone. Everyone would understand it. There'd be no reason to talk about whether someone's receptive to it or not. But at this point, something that we need to understand here, it not means that not everyone who's given the title of Lama is someone who is a Buddha, because you can give people the names of animals. You can call people pigs. You can call Westerners Tibetans, but Tibetan names and so forth. The name is not the problem. What you actually have to look at is the meaning. And someone who knows. So in many secret mantra tantras and in the 50 qualities, it talks about the many characteristics of a guru. And so you need to look at whether someone who's called a lama or a guru has those characteristics. If they do have those characteristics, then you follow them as your guru. And if they do not, then it says, please do not serve them as your guru. And it says this repeatedly over and over again. Sometimes we think what happens is sometimes that we follow gurus who don't have the characteristics, but do follow those who don't have the characteristics. And that goes against the secret mantra. And so when we follow a guru, it should be someone who has all the characteristics. And if it's someone who has those characteristics, then we must not disregard them. We need to respect them. And we need to think of them as being like a guru, and we need to pay respect to them. And for that, and if we don't, then it's a great loss for ourselves. Like give an example of this. If we were people in India 2,500 years ago when the Buddha was on the earth, and if at that time when we saw the Buddha, how would we see the Buddha? How would we have seen the Buddha? We need to think about that. Would we see the Buddha as like a guru? Would we have seen the Buddha as a Buddha? Or would we just see him not pay any attention, just see him as an ordinary person? It's not certain at all. In any case, if we actually look at the real situation at that time when the Buddha was here, there were people who took interest in the Buddha, and there are people who took no interest in the Buddha. There are people who liked the Buddha, and the people who did not like the Buddha. And so for that reason, that time, the Buddha that people saw at the time now, and now the authentic gurus that we see now, what's the difference between them? If a Buddha has all the great qualities and features of greatness, but because we are obscured by ignorant delusion, and so I think we wouldn't have seen them much differently. The main thing is that in our minds, we have a conceptual idea of what a guru should be. When we say a Buddha, we have an idea that a Buddha should be like this. And so we have this idea of what it should be like. And we think that, and we have sort of a wish that a Buddha be in a particular. But that becomes like a character in a myth in our minds. And so if we actually met a Buddha, if they weren't like what we think, then we'd think, you're not a Buddha, and we'd give up on them. It would be very hard for us to actually say, I go for refuge to you. So even if we meet an actual Buddha, there's the danger that we wouldn't see them as a Buddha. And so for that reason, if you see a Buddha, when we actually meet a guru, we should think it's extremely difficult to find and priceless, and we think it's no different than a person who came in person. And so if we actually saw the guru as a Buddha and serve them, then it means that we're actually getting closer to Buddhahood, as it is said. So now what is the purpose or the aim of teaching the four dharmas? This is not talked about clearly in the root text, but in another work by冈波巴, it says, in order to practice dharma naturally, the dharma must go dharma. The dharma must become the path, and the path must dispel confusion. And so for that reason, so if we want to genuinely practice the dharma, if we want to practice the real dharma where the words and the meaning go together, then this is a really important point that we need to know. And what is that really important point? It says in the dharma needs to go to the dharma needs to dispel the path must dispel confusion, and confusion must arise as wisdom, as it says. And so the order of these four dharmas is probably often joined to the four stages of the paths of the individuals of the Kanaba tradition. And so the first is that the first dharma is for primarily people of the lesser individual, as it says. Che Gomso said, what he said is, first, believing in karma and results is the correct worldly view. So meditate on karmic cause and effect, turn away from misdeeds, engage in virtue. The result is that of gods and humans. So that first dharma is joined to the lesser type of individual. And for the dharma to become the dharma, there are three different points that we need to know. And the first of these is, in order to know whether the dharma has gone to the dharma, we need to know the opposite of that. What is dharma that does not become the dharma? That's the first one. We need to identify that. The second is, if the dharma must go to the dharma, then how does the dharma become the dharma? So that is the second point that we need to know. And the third point is, what is the threshold at which the dharma has become the dharma? That is the third point. And so if we ask about what is it dharma that has not become the dharma? So Lolhayat took notes on recording Gampabasak's words on the four dharmas, and it says here, not knowing, being interested in this life, and even dharma, merit, and virtue being pretend virtue, as it says. And so the commentary on this, they're written by Lolhayat. It says, the way he describes it is, isn't all dharma the dharma? Why would the dharma not become the dharma? Not knowing is ignorance, and there are two types. And here, because of delusion about karmic cause and result, or because of the ignorance of conceptualization, one only wants happiness for this life, and then only takes interest in the 8 worldly dharmas. And then one performs mostly the 10 non-virtuous dharmas. If that's so, they are misdeeds themselves. even what seems to be the Dharma, such as generosity, listening, discipline, and meditation practice, does not become Dharma. It is pretend Dharma. And so he explains it in this way. Likewise, the Lord of Dharma Pakamudra said, if you wonder what is Dharma that has not become the Dharma, it is taking interest only in this life and taking interest only in the 8 worldly concerns. That is how he explained it. Likewise, there is a direct disciple of Jigten Subkan, and he wrote the horse year Dharma talks. That means the Dharma talks he gave in the year of the horse. What he says there is, what is Dharma that has not become the Dharma? When you do Dharma for the sake of gain, respect, or making yourself great and good, even virtuous dharmas you do will have the result of a horrible, vicious, and perverted ripening. And so, in any case, there are many such descriptions. And also in the secular tradition, there is the parting from 4 traditions, and it says, if you cling to this life, you are not a practitioner. It is the same point. It comes down to the same point. So in brief, if we don't know how to practice the Dharma, or even if we know the way to, so if we're thinking about the happiness and fame in this lifetime, and we aren't able to give up on this lifetime, if the aim of our lifetime is not to achieve liberation of the state of Buddhahood, but it is only to be happy in this life, to become wealthy or to become well-known or develop power and influence, if we only, and we're only thinking that level, we practice and we just work in that way, or we act in that way only. And other people might say, oh, they know what they're doing. He's great. He's really well-known Dharma Bhikshu. They might say that. But the worst thing, but we also think ourselves, oh, I'm practicing the Dharma. You're deceiving yourself and others. And in the very end, when you're getting to the point of dying, you think, I've done this. You can't think of anything you've done for the Dharma. You can't think of any Dharma that you've practiced, and that's the worst thing, and that is Dharma that has not become the Dharma. So in brief, if we wrap it up, if we sum it up, if we have the attitude of doing it for the happiness, for the pleasure, happiness, and fame in this lifetime, then that is Dharma that has not become the Dharma. And so for that reason, if we need to think about it, so if we think about it in that way, then that is Dharma that has not become the Dharma. And so what this shows is that shows the Dharma that teaches the Dharma that has not become the Dharma. But if we want Dharma to become the Dharma, how does it become? There are 2 different ways. It's taught in 2 different ways. And so here, there is the Dharma becoming the Dharma in terms of meditating on death and impermanence, and also talking about in terms of karmic cause and effect. And the first is, regarding the first, it says in the actual text, for the Dharma to become the Dharma, you should meditate extensively on external and internal interdependence. Leave all things, possessions, relatives, and busyness behind, and go to a solitary place. At that time, unless you think that nothing but Dharma will help, and develop the attitude that nothing is worth doing, the Dharma will never become the Dharma. With death, you do not know when it will come. You can have no assurance about tomorrow. You can have even less about next month. If to describe this in brief, or to give it, in order for Dharma to become the Dharma, you need to talk about the external and internal impermanence of the external world and also the sentient beings. And at the time that you die, you need to realize that you had all the leaves of all of your things and positions, all the relatives you love, and you're going to go alone. And at that time, And at that time, nothing, anything you can think about, nothing is going to help. Nothing is going to help anyone but Dharma at that time. That is how you need to think. And so when you have the idea that nothing but Dharma will help and develop the attitude nothing is worth doing, if when you think about any worldly activity, you think that there's no point to that, there's no benefit to that, and until you think like that, the Dharma will never become the Dharma. With death and impermanence, you don't know when it's going to happen. We think about if we say I'm going to live until if there's no we don't have any power to say I'm going to live to this life in this next year. I'm going to live to this date next year. If we say I'm going to live to this date and to the next year, we don't have that power. We can't say that. And this is something we need to really consider. So that's like a brief explanation of the words of the text. And so there's like kind of a, what do you say, support for that. It's a citation supporting that. And I'll give a few citations supporting that. There are just a few. If I needed to quote everything that I found, there'd be so much. And I don't see that there would be that much need to do so. But there are a few that give important points. And one is from Pakmudrupa. It says, by meditating on death and impermanence, the mind turns away from this life, so the Dharma becomes the Dharma, he says. Likewise, also I mentioned a few months ago, there's Jigong Chobasungan's Horse Year Dharma talks that I mentioned before. It says, what must you do to reverse the thoughts of this world? You must turn the mind away from this life by remembering death and impermanence. Similarly, there is the three principal points of the path by Lord Tsongkhapa. By contemplating the leisures and endowments so difficult to find in the fleeting nature of your life, reverse the clinging to this life. So basically the same meaning. They all come down to the same point. So in brief, so the life is impermanent. And there's also the karmic cause and effect and the defects of samsara. And when we talk about this, it's like an old person's babbling, something they're saying the same thing every year. And people, you hear it so much, you just can't hear it anymore. It's like it just doesn't go into your ears anymore. It's like our ears have hardened. And so when you talk about this, you say, oh, it's like that? Oh, yeah, it's probably like that. But it's not anything that moves us or that gives us any feeling. It doesn't create any feeling in us. And so in that point, and so we talk about it in the text, but it's said in the text, and it's so important. And it's said over and over again, but we never really think about it. And it just doesn't really move us. So but if we were to talk about it maybe in terms of our contemporary way of thinking about it, I think maybe it'd be helpful. It's possible that this will be helpful. When we teach the Dharma, it's important to speak in a way that fits with the current day. Like there's a day. You need to speak the human words to humans and donkey words to donkeys. And so you need to talk in the word, you need to speak in language in the contemporary language. And so if you look back in our own human lives, in this life, within this lifetime, we've had a lot of good times and bad times. And all of them, if they really think about what they really come down to, the point that they come down to the end, there's one point they come down to, and that is that everything changes. Everything changes. Saying that everything changes, what that means is that it means that they become different than they were before. We can talk about it in a positive way. And that way we have every day we have a new day. We have a new hour and a new moment, and we get a new hour every day. And so for any moment, we have a new opportunity. We get new opportunities all the time. But if we talk about it in the negative side, in many situations just don't turn out the way we planned or the way we hoped. And so sometimes we get really amazed, surprised by it. Sometimes we get overwhelmed by it. And there are many difficult situations that arise because of this. So in brief, so in this lifetime, there's so many changes that in the end, we all must die. And that death is also change, right? Even if we think about us individuals, we might think, oh, it's better if we don't die. It's probably good. It's better to stay living. We all think this, right? But if we actually think about it, in this world, there are 7.8 billion people. That's what they say, that's the population is. And if none of the 7.8 billion died and everyone lived and continued having children, what would happen? What would it be like? There'd be a lot of difficulties. There wouldn't be enough food or clothing. There wouldn't be enough place for everyone to live. In the end, there would be nothing to do. That people would have to resort to cannibalism, and people would have to live sitting on top of each other. Very many horrifying situations would occur. So if you think about it in terms of think about it, that people have to die, or that people, there's a reason why people have to die. But we, no matter who we are, we haven't died. And once you've died, you don't come back, right? Because we've never died. When we die, what happens? We wonder what's going to happen when we die. We can't think about what it's going. We can't conceive of what it's going to be like. So no, but none of us have died. But none of us know what it's going to be like when we die. But sometimes when someone was close to us, or when we hear about in the news that someone has died, there's a little bit of feeling that comes, oh, this death and permanence is probably that, we can think. In particular, last year. Oh no, it's not this year. We have already gone that. It's already gone. So to get rid of that year. Last year, we've already said goodbye to last year. Last year, in 2020, there was the epidemic, the coronavirus. There was the very well-known coronavirus epidemic happened. And every day, thousands of people died every day because of it. But mostly, we don't think that such a terrifying thing is going to happen to us. And so for that reason, so there are many, actually one of the most terrifying things about death is there are many terrifying things about death, but the most terrifying thing is that there's no way to tell when we're actually going to die. That is the most terrifying aspect. If we are prepared to die, and if we could predict accurately when we're going to die, perhaps we wouldn't have so much fear and worry from not knowing about death. And the reason why I think this is that at the time that we die, we can actually get, when we know when we're going to die, we can make even better plans before. You can make plans for what you're going to do. And another thing we can do is we then don't waste time. Think, I've got something that I'm going to do, and so then you do them first. You complete them first, because I'm going to die tomorrow. So that if you're going to die tomorrow, you won't have anything that you regret. The most important thing we need to, the most important is the one that we have to have the strongest interest in, but actually in the way things actually are. But we don't even think to do that. But we forget what's the most important thing to do, and we don't hurry to do it. So yesterday, oh, I didn't think about it, so I thought. So the time we die, we think, oh, I thought I should have done this, but I didn't do it. I thought I should do that, but I didn't do it, and we feel a lot of regrets. And so when we say things like this, that many people feel uncomfortable. It's better about that. Don't think about that. Don't talk about it. It's no fun. It's not pleasant. And so when you talk about death, it's very saddening and depressing. But one thing we really need to take joy in, take some joy in, and something we can take a broader view because of is that we have future lives. That's it. And so it's not just that we have future lives, we have an unending supply of future lives. There's no end to our future lives. And if we're talking about this in terms of Buddhism, if you can think about it, we consider, oh, of course there are. As Buddhists, we take it granted that there are. Whether we recognize it, we say, oh, yes, there are. We sort of just take it for granted that there are. But if we actually kind of let ourselves take some time to think about whether or not there are actually past and future lives, and really think carefully about this, probably very few of us have actually ever done it. If we never do that. We say, oh, yes, there are, but we've never actually sat down to think. And are there future lives or they're not? Is there anyone who's taken the time to actually look at this? Probably none of us have ever really thought about this. And so for this reason, thinking about this is actually really important. And since we need to think about this, and so the Buddha said this person said it, that person said, and leave it there. You need to think about it yourself, for yourself. You need to use your own logic. It's really important for us to think, is there actually a future life or not? Otherwise, if we say the Buddhists say it, if we read the text by the great scholars and say that's how it is, but it doesn't give the same feeling as if we think about it ourselves and consider for our own selves. And if own selves, it cannot create such experience within yourself as when you think about it for yourself. In any case, it's important for us to think about it in terms of our own selves and to examine it for our own selves. And when we think about this, there are several different points. You can talk about some of the proofs or several different ways we need to think about it. The first thought we could have and say first way we could think about it is there's no future lives. I've thought about it and there's none. There's none. And when you're dead, it's like the same as a candle going out. And so they're done. The continuous done. Your being is done. It's over. So it's possible that you might think that. That is one way of thinking about it. So it's thinking that there's just nothing at all. So at the very beginning, at first, We think we believe that there is, but if we take it as, but there's no certain about that. In other words, just saying that it's there doesn't develop develop that doesn't give us conviction. So we need to think about it from the beginning. And if you start from zero and start from that point of starting from the 1 to 0 and say, then you can develop confidence. But if you just think that there probably is, give some sort of an understanding that there must be, or just some sort of an assumption that there is, that doesn't help. Now, the second way of thinking, the second thought that you might think is, there are many different religions in the world, and what most religions say is that there's going to be a judgment day at the end. There's a final judgment. They say that there is going to be a judgment day. And so that when you die, it's not your being doesn't end. It's like you go to the court of God, and you go into that court, and they decide whether you are going to, all those who are going to hell are sent to hell, all those who are going to heaven are sent to heaven. And God decides that, and then that determines where you're going to go from then on. Now, the third way of thinking, what we might think is, it's similar to our Buddhist way of thinking. There are future lives, there's a next life, maybe there's just one, maybe there are two, three, maybe hundreds of thousands, or maybe there might be a limitless future lives. It's possible to think in this way. And it's a beginning that when we talk from the ancient times to now, we talk about the philosophers, thinkers, or the different religions, and all of them, one thing that they all take, the fundamental question that they all think about is, what is the essence of people living? What is the meaning of life? What is the essence of human life? That is the basic question that they ask. So from ancient times until today, most people, either whether in the East or the West, most people think that when they die, they're not going to cease. Their continuum won't cease, that there'll be something that'll be left. Many religions do explain this. If our life is just one life, and it's only one life now, then there's no particular reason for us to live in this human world. There's no point, because why did you come for that one life? There's a good question about that. If you're coming back over and over again, there can be a reason, right? If you're only one time, then there's no point for all of the philosophy or religion on this world. So there's like no reason to continue being. But because we're continuing, there's a definite reasons for it, and so we talk about that, and so there becomes a reason for all these scientific texts and religion. And so we need to actually look in terms of the actual things that we see and what we can practically see and hold and examine on that and describe it. And so there are many scientists who do this, and they say that you cannot unilaterally say that people who die are going to cease to exist. Not only can they not say that you cannot say this definitively, they also say they're trying to do many different methods to research this. So in brief, right now, we don't really have 100% certainty that we're going to have virtues. Even us Buddhists don't have it. We're Buddhists assert that there are past and future lives, but we don't really believe it 100%. But in our lifetime that we live every day, it's possible that we can think about, are there past and future lives? And there's an important point about why we need to think about that. So there's going to be a solitary, quiet, dark night. it's possible that we'll think about it on that type of an evening, or on some morning when there's a gentle wind and there's a warm day, and we might think about past and future lives. What's going to happen? We might think, oh, there must be a consciousness that's going to continue. It's possible that we might think this, that there's some things such as consciousness that will remain. So these days, even scientists say, when people say that when people have cardiac arrest, and just a few minutes later, there are people who can then be revived, right? And they examine these people. And so after the people have died, after the brain ceases functioning, what happens? They examine. All over the world, there are a lot of people who remember past lifetimes, in particular young children. There are many young children who remember who have confirmable memories of previous lifetimes. And if we, in the future, if we have not just future lives, not just one, not just two, but if we can decide that there's going to be 1 or 2 or 100 or more, if we can decide that now, if we think, well, how will this change the way we do things in this lifetime? It's definitely going to have an effect. For example, if you're making a movie, in that movie, if you only make one movie and you make it for just a specific time, then the script and the meaning are going to be done for just that particular just for that particular occasion. You're going to make it so that it can be done within that 2 minutes. You have that plan. If that movie, excuse me, so if you have a movie that is going to have a particular, just a one time, then you do it to fit in that 1-2 hour period of time. But if you're going to do it as episodes that go repeatedly, then you have to have a script that's going to go from script to script. Similarly, if we have only one lifetime, we need to make plans for that just that one life. But if we're going to have many lifetimes, then similarly, we have to have a different way of thinking that makes plans for future lifetimes, right? We need to make something. We need to make up something for the future lives. And so, for that reason, so when we need to look, we need to direct our vision not just from this lifetime to think about longer term, think about a more vast terms. If we can think about what's going to happen, if we can look back or look with an eye for what's going to happen. So from 1,000 lifetimes, so if now 1,000 times later, we can look back and see what we did in this lifetime. If we see, we're going to see this one lifetime that we're in now as being short and being small and not insignificant. For example, think about this world within the solar system is actually a smaller planet within our solar system. And so within our constellation, there are places like there's the whole universe. Within the whole universe, there are many galaxies. How many galaxies that the scientists can see there? There are 20,000 galaxies that the scientists are able to see. If we think about this present human world, we can say that there are basically 20,000 constellations. So how many stars are there like our sun? It's difficult for us to get our minds around. It's hard to even count. And if we think about it in this way, this Earth, in terms of the world, in terms of the universe, it's just not even. It's not even like like hardly even a grain of rice. If the Earth is even smaller than a grain of rice, what about humans? They're even less than that. Then you can't even you couldn't even consider humans things. And so we need to think about it in the same way. We need to have we need to have a vaster way of thinking about things, not a limited way of thinking, but a vaster way of thinking. And if we think about it in a vaster way, then we can need to think about whether they're past and future lives. And so in this lifetime, is extremely short, and there's very little of it. It's tiny. But at the same time, another thing that we need to think about, this birth, earth, this life, this is a short time. It's so small and inconsignificant, and in comparison to future lives, it's small, but we need to understand that it's extremely precious. And what we say in the Buddhist life, we talk about the leisures and resources that are so hard to get. And so for that reason, if we think about it in that way, then it's something that we can actually move our minds. And I think it's something that actually can motivate us, I think. Whatever we say, sometimes when we think about things, it doesn't give us much feeling at all. And it's like when you have the human, when you want to communicate with oxen, then you can't talk them. You can only strike them with a stick. And so in the same way, we're similar to that. Well, I don't know if we're actually like oxen, but we're similar to that. They can't actually talk to us sometimes. If there's until there's some sort of catastrophe that happens, we say, oh, nothing's going to move. We can't even think about it. And so for that reason, so what can we do? There's nothing you can do. And so that's how it is. Okay. So we will leave it there for today.